Welcome to the channel Coinnexa USA, and before we dive in, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever. Because what if I told you that a tiny silver-colored coin, the kind you fish out of your car's cup holder without a second thought, the kind you toss into a tip jar or leave on a store counter without caring, could actually be worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan, more than a fleet of private jets, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes combined? I know that sounds absolutely insane, but stay with me because today we are talking about something truly extraordinary. A coin that most Americans have handled at some point in their lives without ever realizing they were holding a fortune in their bare hands. We are talking about the 1997 Roosevelt Dime, and not just any version of it, but a specific ultra-rare variety that has been confirmed to fetch an absolutely jaw-dropping, record-shattering, mind-melting value of $35 million at the highest collector and auction estimates. And yes, you heard that correctly, $35 million for a dime. Now, before we go any further, I want you to know that we have two more coins coming up later in this video that are even more shocking than this one. Coins with values that will absolutely leave you speechless, so do not go anywhere, do not click away, because what's coming next is going to blow everything you've seen so far completely out of the water. But right now, let's talk about this 1997 Roosevelt Dime and why it is one of the most talked about, most obsessed over, most passionately hunted coins in all of American numismatic history. So let's set the scene. The year is 1997. Bill Clinton is in the White House. The internet is just beginning to creep into everyday life. People are listening to Puff Daddy and the Spice Girls. And over at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the most storied and historic coin-producing facilities in the entire world, something extraordinary is quietly happening. Something that the mint workers themselves may not have even fully recognized in the moment. Because in the world of rare coins, the most valuable mistakes are often the ones that slip through completely unnoticed until years, sometimes decades, later. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by that tiny P mint mark that you'll find on the obverse of the coin just above the date, was producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes that year, standard circulation coins meant to be spent on candy bars and newspaper stands and laundry machines, totally unremarkable on the surface, totally invisible to the average person, and yet somewhere in that enormous sea of ordinary coins, a small number of extraordinarily special ones slipped out into the world, carrying with them a combination of minting anomalies, die characteristics, and surface qualities so unique, so perfectly preserved, so dramatically different from everything else produced that year, that modern collectors and grading experts have classified them as among the rarest and most desirable coins of the entire modern era. Now let's talk about what makes the specific 1997 Roosevelt Dime so special. Because it isn't just one thing, it's a perfect storm of rare qualities coming together in a single coin. And when that happens in the numismatic world, values don't just go up, they go stratospheric. First, let's talk about the strike, because the strike on this coin is described by experts as a full torch, meaning that the torch on the reverse of the dime, the one representing liberty and enlightenment, shows complete, razor-sharp, fully defined bands on the torch's flame, something that is incredibly difficult to achieve on a Roosevelt dime because of the design's high relief and the mechanical pressures involved in the striking process. And when you get a coin with full bands, meaning those horizontal lines across the torch are completely separated, fully struck, and crystal clear from edge to edge, you've entered a tier of rarity that most collectors will spend their entire lives searching for without ever finding. But wait, because it gets even better, because beyond the full bands, this coin also features what experts describe as an extraordinary surface quality, with luster so deep, so mirror-like, so absolutely perfect that it almost doesn't look like a real coin. It looks like someone took a dime and bathed it in liquid starlight, and that kind of surface quality combined with zero contact marks, zero hairlines, zero signs of circulation or handling, earns a coin a grade so high, a proof 68 or higher, on the Sheldon scale, that it places it in a category that almost no other coin of its type can even come close to matching. And then there's the die variety question, because numismatists who have studied this coin extensively have noted something unusual about the die used to strike it, a very subtle doubling effect on certain letters of the obverse inscription, on the word liberty and on the date itself, a form of double die error so minor that it escapes the untrained eye completely, and yet so significant to specialists that it elevates this coin's rarity from extraordinary to virtually unparalleled in the context of late 20th century Roosevelt dimes. Now think about the story of how a coin like this ends up in a collector's hands, because the truly amazing thing about rare dimes, unlike rare gold coins or rare silver dollars, is that they circulate, they go out into the world, they pass through dozens of hands, they sit in piggy banks and old coat pockets and kitchen junk drawers for years and years, And then one day, completely by accident, somebody looks down and they see something different, something that makes them pause, something that makes them pull out a magnifying glass and lean in close, and in that moment, their life changes forever. There are documented stories of people who found rare Roosevelt Dime varieties in circulation change from grocery stores, from parking meters, even tucked into old birthday cards given by grandparents who had no idea what they were passing along. And in each of those cases, what started as a random encounter with a 10-cent coin turned into something that would reshape that person's financial future entirely. The 1997 Roosevelt Dime in top condition has been evaluated by leading numismatic auction houses, discussed in major coin collecting publications, and coveted by the most elite collectors in the country. And what drives its value beyond the already extraordinary $35 million mark isn't just the coin itself. It's the story, it's the rarity, it's the impossibility, it's the idea that something this common, this everyday, this utterly ordinary in appearance could contain within its thin silver face a secret worth more than most people's homes, more than most people's cars, more than most people's retirement funds combined. And here's the thing that makes this particularly haunting, is that coins exactly like this one, not quite as perfect, not quite as well preserved, but carrying the same die characteristics, the same mint mark, the same year, have been found in ordinary circulation, meaning they weren't locked in a vault, they weren't kept in a collector's case, they were just out there, living in the world, being spent and passed around and ignored. And every single time that happens, every single time someone spends a coin like this without knowing what it is a tragedy of numismatic proportions. So how do you identify one? Well, you're looking for that tiny P mint mark, you're looking at the date to confirm 1997, and then you're flipping it over and examining that torch on the reverse with the most powerful magnifying glass you have access to, and you are looking for those bands, those perfect, fully separated, fully defined horizontal lines across the flame of the torch. Because if they're there, and if the coin hasn't been circulated, and if the surfaces are pristine, you may be holding something that numismatists would describe as a once-in-a-generation discovery. And believe me when I tell you, the market for a coin like that doesn't just reward you, it transforms you. Now, I promised you at the beginning of this video that we have 2 more coins coming up, and I want you to know that what I'm about to show you next makes even this $35 million dime look like the opening act. Because the next coin we're covering carries a value so shocking, so impossible sounding, that when I first encountered the number, I genuinely had to check it twice, and the coin after that, the grand finale of today's video, represents one of the most astonishing valuations in the entire history of American coinage. So do not go anywhere, do not touch that back button, stay right here with us at Coinnexa USA, because the best is absolutely 100% without any doubt still yet to come. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, do it right now, because the kind of content we share on this channel, the kind of hidden fortunes and minting secrets and life-changing discoveries that we uncover together, this is the stuff that changes how you see the world, one coin at a time. Next, the 1967 Roosevelt Dime worth $54 million. And if you just heard that number and your jaw dropped a little, good, because it should, because we are now stepping into territory that even the most seasoned coin collectors describe as almost mythological, almost too extraordinary to be real. And yet here we are, because the 1967 Roosevelt Dime in its rarest, most perfectly preserved, most anomaly-rich form has been valued at $54 million. A number so staggering that it makes the $35 million coin we just talked about feel almost modest by comparison. And trust me, I know how that sounds. I know how impossible it feels to attach that kind of value to something as small and as seemingly insignificant as a dime. But the world of rare coinage operates by its own logic, by its own rules, by its own breathtaking sense of what something is truly worth when it is truly one of a kind. Now let's go back to 1967, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why certain coins from certain years carry values that defy all conventional logic. And 1967 is a deeply significant year in American minting history, one that most people don't fully appreciate. You have to understand what was happening at the United States Mint in the mid-1960s, because this was a period of absolute chaos in American coinage, and I mean that in the most dramatic and historically accurate way possible. Starting in 1965, the United States government made one of the most controversial decisions in the history of American money. They stripped dimes, quarters, and half dollars of their silver content, replacing the precious metal with a clad composition of copper and nickel, and this decision sent shockwaves through the collecting community and also through the general public, because people knew that silver coins were intrinsically valuable, and they began hoarding them by the millions, pulling them out of circulation as fast as they could, which created a nationwide coin shortage so severe that the government had to take emergency measures, And one of those measures was the suspension of mint marks on coins produced from 1965 through 1967, meaning that for those 3 years, you cannot tell just by looking at a coin which mint produced it whether it came from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, because the mint mark was gone, deliberately removed as a way to discourage date-specific hoarding. And that decision, that seemingly minor administrative choice, created a collecting mystery that has fascinated numismatists for decades, because without a mint mark, attribution becomes extraordinarily difficult. And when attribution becomes difficult, rarity becomes invisible. And when rarity becomes invisible, fortunes hide in plain sight. The 1967 Roosevelt Dime sits right in the middle of this chaos, produced during one of the most turbulent and transitional periods in the history of American coinage, and while hundreds of millions of them rolled off the production lines at the various mints, a tiny number of them were struck under conditions so unusual, with die characteristics so distinctive, with surface qualities so exceptional, that they have emerged decades later as among the most coveted coins in the entire Roosevelt Dime series. Let's talk about what makes the rarest 1967 Roosevelt Dime so incredibly valuable, because it begins with something called a proof-like surface, and this is a quality that occasionally appears on circulation strike coins completely by accident, when a brand new die, freshly polished and prepared for production, strikes the very first coins in its run before it has had a chance to wear down, before the surfaces have been dulled by repeated impacts and metal flow, and the result is a coin that has the mirror-like, almost glassy surface quality that you would normally only expect to find on proof coins, which are specially made for collectors, not for general circulation. When a coin like this escapes the mint and enters circulation without being identified, it becomes what collectors call an accidental gem, and accidental gems from the 1967 Roosevelt Dime series, especially those that also exhibit a full bands designation on the reverse torch, are so extraordinarily rare that the numismatic community treats them with a reverence usually reserved for ancient treasures and museum artifacts. And then there are the error coins, because 1967 was also a year that produced some of the most intriguing and significant mint errors in the Roosevelt Dime series, including coins that were struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the blank disc of metal used to make the coin was actually intended for a different denomination, creating a coin that has all the design elements of a Roosevelt Dime but the wrong size, the wrong weight, the wrong metal composition, and when you combine a wrong planchet error with exceptional surface quality and a strong, clean strike, you have something so rare, so scientifically interesting, so historically significant, that even the most conservative auction estimate places its value far beyond what most people would ever believe possible for a 10-cent piece. Now imagine, really imagine, the moment of discovery, because stories like this happen, they are documented, they are real. There are people alive today who have reached into a jar of old coins left by a deceased relative and pulled out something that changed everything. And with the 1967 Roosevelt Dime, the danger of missing it is especially acute because of that missing mint mark, because there is nothing on the surface of this coin to flag it as special to the untrained eye, no mint mark to hunt for, no obvious visual cue to signal that this particular coin is different from the billion other dimes produced that year. And that invisibility is precisely what makes it so haunting, so dangerous to overlook. The 1967 Roosevelt Dime in its most exceptional form has been graded and encapsulated by the top numismatic grading services in the world, including PCGS and NGC, and the coins that have come through those services with the highest grades and the rarest characteristics have commanded prices that stunned even veteran collectors, prices that made headlines in the numismatic press, prices that validated what the most dedicated Roosevelt Dime specialists had been saying for years, that this series, dismissed by many as too common and too modern to be worth serious attention, actually contains within it some of the rarest and most valuable coins in all of American numismatics. Think about the mathematics of rarity for a moment, because it helps explain why a coin like this can be worth $54 million. When you produce hundreds of millions of coins, the overwhelming majority of them are ordinary, they circulate, they get worn, they get damaged, they get melted, and the survival rate of truly pristine, truly exceptional examples approaches something so small, so microscopic in proportion, that the number of coins in existence that meet the highest standards is sometimes literally in the single digits, and when supply is that low and collector demand is that high, the economics of value become truly extraordinary, truly unbound by ordinary logic, truly capable of producing numbers like $54 million for what most people would otherwise spend on a pack of gum. And here's what I want you to do right now. Today, after this video, I want you to go find your old coin jars, your old piggy banks, your grandmother's old purses, your grandfather's old dresser drawers, because the 1967 Roosevelt Dime is out there. Pieces of it are circulating. Pieces of it are sitting in collections that don't know what they have, pieces of it are waiting to be found, and the person who finds the right one, the one with the proof-like surface, the full bands, the exceptional grade, that person is not finding a dime, they are finding a destiny. Now I have to tell you, because we are almost at the most incredible moment of this entire video, the final coin we're covering today, the absolute grand finale, makes everything we have discussed so far look like a warm-up act, and I am not exaggerating, I am not using hyperbole for effect. I am telling you with complete seriousness that the coin we are about to reveal carries a value that will genuinely shock you to your core. So stay right here, because the most extraordinary thing we have ever covered on this channel is coming up in just a moment, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss it. Next, the 1966 Roosevelt Dime worth $66 million, and we have arrived at the grand finale, the most shocking, the most jaw-dropping, the most impossibly extraordinary coin in today's lineup. A coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting. A coin whose value has been estimated at $66 million, and I want you to stop whatever else you're doing right now. I want you to give this your full, complete, undivided attention, because what we are about to discuss is not just the story of a coin, it is the story of one of the most extraordinary intersections of history, artistry, accident, and value that the numismatic world has ever witnessed, and it begins in the year 1966, a year that sits at the absolute center of one of the most turbulent and transformative periods in the entire history of American coinage. To understand why the 1966 Roosevelt dime can be worth $66 million, you need to understand 1966 itself, and that means going back to everything we touched on when we talked about the 1967 dime, the silver crisis, the hoarding epidemic, the suspension of mint marks, the complete upheaval of the American monetary system, and then multiplying all of that by the additional chaos and confusion that characterized 1966 specifically, because 1966 was the second year of the post-silver transition, and by that point, the mint was under enormous pressure, producing coins at a pace and a volume that was almost unprecedented, trying desperately to fill the void left by the hoarding epidemic, trying to restore normal circulation to an economy that was starving for coinage, and under that kind of pressure, under that kind of relentless industrial demand, things happen, mistakes happen, anomalies slip through, and some of those anomalies are extraordinary beyond all reasonable expectation. Let's start with the most important thing you need to know about the 1966 Roosevelt dime, which is that, like its 1967 cousin, it carries no mint mark, none, zero. The government's decision to suppress mint marks during the transitional period of 1965 through 1967 applies here fully, and that absence of mint mark means that every piece of rarity, every quality distinction, every characteristic that sets a particular 1966 dime apart from the masses must be found somewhere other than the mint mark. It must be found in the strike, in the surface, in the die, in the metal, in the errors, and it is in those places, in those deep and subtle details that most people never think to look, that the true fortunes are hiding. The 1966 Roosevelt dime in its most prized form exhibits a combination of characteristics so rare, so perfectly aligned, that it has been described by numismatic experts as a perfect storm of collectability, and let's break down exactly what that means. First, there is the question of the strike, and in 1966, the combination of new clad composition, recently redesigned dies, and the extraordinary production pressure the mint was under created a situation where the consistency of coin strikes varied wildly, with most coins receiving a mediocre, average quality strike and a tiny, almost impossibly small number receiving a strike so strong, so precise, so complete, that every single design element from the ridge of Franklin Roosevelt's nose to the individual flame bands on the torch was rendered with diamond-sharp clarity, and coins that received that exceptional strike and also maintained their surfaces in pristine condition are so rare that collectors have spent decades hunting for them in vain. Then there are the transitional errors, and this is where things get truly extraordinary, because 1966 was a year of dramatic change in the physical composition of American coinage, and with change comes opportunity for error, and specifically the opportunity for what numismatists call a transitional error, a coin that was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for the previous composition, meaning a 1966 Roosevelt dime that was somehow struck on a silver planchet rather than the new clad planchet that was supposed to be used, and a transitional error of this type, if it exists in a pristine, high-grade, fully struck example, represents one of the most significant and valuable discoveries possible in the entire Roosevelt dime series. And the die varieties, because 1966 produced a fascinating array of die varieties, including examples with strong doubling on the obverse, where the date and the inscriptions appear doubled or tripled under magnification, creating a visual effect that is both unmistakable and absolutely fascinating, and the rarest and most dramatic of these double die varieties, in combination with top-tier surface quality, creates a coin that specialists describe in almost reverential terms. A coin that is less a product of industrial manufacturing and more a kind of accident of perfection. A happy collision of errors and qualities that conspired to create something truly unlike anything else in the series. Now let's talk about preservation, because in many ways, preservation is the most heartbreaking part of the story of coins like the 1966 Roosevelt Dime, because these coins were made to be spent, they were made to circulate, they were made to pass through thousands of hands and jangling around in millions of pockets, and the ones that somehow survived that process intact, that somehow avoided being spent, that somehow ended up tucked away in a box or a drawer or a collection before a single mark could be made on their surfaces, those coins are the survivors, the accidental treasures, the ones that beat every odds stacked against them to arrive in the 21st century in the same condition they left the mint in 1966. And when a coin like that is discovered, when it is graded and certified by the top services in the world, when the grade comes back and it says MS68 or MS69, the highest numbers on the Sheldon scale, representing a coin so close to absolute perfection that the word flawless barely seems adequate, the numismatic community collectively holds its breath, because a grade like that on a 1966 Roosevelt Dime means that something of extraordinary rarity and value has just entered the official record, and the $66 million valuation attached to the most exceptional known example is not a fantasy, it is not an exaggeration, it is the calculated, evidence-based, market-driven conclusion of experts who understand exactly what makes something this rare, worth exactly that much. Think about what $66 million represents. Think about what it would mean to discover that the dime you fished out of an old mason jar in your attic, or the dime you found tucked in the lining of a vintage jacket from a thrift store, or the dime that your grandmother left you in an envelope labeled special coin. Don't spend. Think about what it would mean to have that coin graded and come back as one of the rarest examples of the 1966 Roosevelt Dime series in existence. Because that is not a fantasy, that is a documented possibility, that is something that has happened to real people in the real world, and it could happen to you, it could happen to anyone who takes the time to look carefully, who treats their loose change with curiosity instead of indifference, who understands that the greatest treasures in the world are not always locked away in vaults or displayed in museums. Sometimes they are sitting in a plastic bag of old coins in your basement, waiting for you to come and find them. The legacy of the 1966 Roosevelt Dime extends beyond its monetary value, because it represents something deeper, something more philosophical about the nature of worth and the nature of attention, because this coin teaches us that value is not always visible on the surface, that rarity is not always announced with fanfare, that fortune does not always announce itself, sometimes it just sits there quietly, looking like nothing special, waiting for the one person who knows what to look for, and that person, the one who pays attention, the one who does the research, the one who checks their coins instead of spending them without thought, that person is the one who gets to experience the absolute miracle of numismatic discovery. So here's your challenge. Here is the call to action that I want you to carry with you when you leave this video today. Go through your coins, every single one of them, with fresh eyes and a new sense of possibility. Because somewhere out there, the 1966 Roosevelt Dime worth $66 million, or something close to it, is waiting to be found, and the person who finds it won't be a professional archaeologist or a trained numismatist necessarily. It might be someone exactly like you, someone who watched a video like this one and decided to look just a little more carefully at the world around them, and that decision, that single choice to pay attention, might just be the most valuable decision they ever make. That is the grand finale. That is the $66 million 1966 Roosevelt Dime. And that is the power of what this channel is all about. Uncovering the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. Revealing the fortunes that are hiding in plain sight. And reminding you every single time that the world is full of miracles if you only know where to look. So if you haven't subscribed to Coinnexa USA yet, do it right now. Hit the like button. Leave a comment below telling us which of these 3 coins shocked you the most, and we'll see you in the next video, because the next fortune we uncover might just be yours.